And I have complete confidence in the power and the capacity of people like you to do something about it. Think about this. Chris Etienne talked the other day that the number of polio cases in the world is 0 at this point in time. We are that close. And who did that? People like you. Okay, so what I want to just quickly summarize one of the key findings from the study in 2022 is we discovered that the growing clubs share these five attributes. All right. The clubs look different. They feel different. They act differently. There's all kinds of differences between them. But in general, they are big time, full of engaged members. I'll talk a little bit more about that because it's true in the recent study as well. Their service is dynamic and meaningful. People want to be part of what they're doing. They have effective governance. These slides, by the way, can be made available to you. I believe this presentation is on the Zones 28 and 32 website. I'm going to check to make sure that's the case, but you can go there as well. They have strong club governance and intentional leadership. They have leadership who want to make things happen. They want to do things. They want to serve. They want to have an impact on their community. They have awesome public image. All right? They don't just serve, they are seen to be serving. And they work really hard to make sure that their club is more and better representative of the community in which they live. Okay? So, the survey that we did, as I said, was clubs across North America, roughly 350 clubs that showed consistent growth over that time frame, that 5-year period. It ends up being roughly 4 or 5% of the clubs in North America, and we had a 35% response rate. It's important to point out that doesn't mean they were the only growing clubs. All right, there were lots of other clubs that grew, but we just decided you had to have grown in a particular way, which I'll show you now. We were looking for a net growth of 10 over that period of time, and that you grew in 3 to 5 years. So there's lots of clubs that had big growth in one year, but not in the others that weren't part of it. That doesn't mean they weren't successful or strong clubs, or maybe your club was one of them. Because there were clubs in every district and in every zone in North America that are part of it. But I really want to emphasize this to all of you. This is really important. It was true in the last study, and it is as it is in this one. Size is irrelevant. Small clubs are just as capable of growing as large clubs. We hear a lot. People ask, well, what about small clubs? Because you have to behave in a different way if you're a smaller group of people. You can't take things on in the same kind of way. But small clubs have the ability to grow. It's not your size that counts. It's not the size that matters. It's you. It's leadership that matters. And here's the other point. 85%. Look at the size of that number of clubs. Big number. Mm-hmm. All right. Clubs in North America hover around 30-ish or less. And those of you who come from a small community, there's a limit to what you can do. Okay. So just so you know how we constructed the survey, we had a series of questions like this, statements rather, like this. And what we ask people to do is to check off on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being never and 5 being always. And then we had a couple of really interesting open-ended questions that resulted in some really rich comments and information, some of which I will share with you. So here's what we found, that if you look at the 4 priorities, increase our impact was the lowest for one key reason, which I'll talk about in a second. But look at that. Often or always, clubs are doing things that result in expanding our reach, okay, increasing participant engagement, and increasing our ability to adapt. Often or always. That's important and that's significant. So let me dive in a little bit. A little more specifically on this, all right? The point about governance and leadership. There's strong governance and leadership, 4.3, that's pretty strong. The actively engaging with other organizations, setting club goals and tracking progress. I'm going to come back to that in a minute because it's incredibly important. And the last one, conducting a community assessment. And the reason that statement ended up being in there because we felt it was really important to have a better understanding of the extent to which people were really reaching out and understanding their community. All right, and so because that is actually the lowest area, and as a general rule, what clubs are not doing is, it's not that they don't have an awareness of issues, but they're responding to the issues of which they're aware, as opposed to having a deep understanding of some of the many hidden issues. Mental health is becoming an increasing area of awareness, but historically it hasn't been. That's just an example of one. Michael talked about another. But anyway, you can see, often or always, in all of these important areas. Okay? I'm not going to run through all of this data. It's way too much data for me to try to digest, particularly in the middle of the afternoon. But 40% entering goals in Club Central. Entering the goals means it's more likely that you're going to do something to achieve the goals. It's a silly, hokey thing to say, but it's absolutely true that if you don't know where you're going, you're going to find it really hard to know when you get there. Right? It's amazing how difficult it has been for club leaders to enter the goals in Club Central. The reason that that's important is it's a target for you to be working towards, but it also provides really important information for Rotary leaders to understand what's important to you and where the organization needs to go. And the other thing is the Rotary citation. Often we get the citation and we think, well, why is that important, whatever. But there's a greater likelihood that you're going to be part of the growing club if you achieve the citation. And the point of those things is setting some targets, finding some things to work towards. And you are just as capable of doing all of those things as any of these clubs. What I've done is I have shared with your district governor-elect a 4-page tip sheet that he or she has been asked to share with you with ideas of things that you can do in each of these areas. So you'll find 4 or 5 things that you could do to increase your impact, 4 or 5 things you could do to expand your reach, etc. So there will be examples like this. The point that I've already made about setting goals, the point about leadership and governance. How many of you have a club, show of hands, have a club of 20 members or fewer? Okay. We hear a lot. Well, what about small clubs? Well, small clubs focus. You will begin to grow by focus. Stop thinking that you need to do everything, because you can't. Just do a really, really good job at a small number of things, and you will be amazed at what can happen. The other thing that you can do, and you may very well do already, is share the problem, share the job, share the task. What I like to say is, your job as a president is not to do everything. It's to make sure things get done. Right? It's to think about things in a different way. So, focus on the community and have a way or find information about what community issues and needs are, because there are a lot of them, and there are all kinds of opportunities that we have for service, and there are way more opportunities for service than there are Rotarians in the world to do it. So the next priority is expand our reach. And so What people do, the growing clubs are doing, is they're using multiple media to tell our story. It does not say social media. It's multiple media, which means, particularly for those of you in smaller communities, that you probably still have a community newspaper or a local newspaper, has taken real advantage of that. And I don't need to talk to you too much. Why am I even making an appointment? Just had Mary Lou talking to you about that. Partnering with other organizations, other service clubs, other community groups, social service departments, agencies, boards of education, etc. And then the issue of reflecting the community. Now, what's interesting to me is how people are doing that. They do that in a number of ways. Sometimes clubs are thinking about it in terms of Rotary's diversity, equity, and inclusion statement, but sometimes they think about it in terms of profession. Sometimes they think in terms of its age, or gender, or whatever, or geography, and so on. Sometimes they think about it in all of those. The point is the value that you achieve in finding ways and reaching out to other areas in your community where members may not already come from. What I'm about to say now is, it's my opinion, it's not something that came to us from the study. Okay, so this is an incredibly important point. Growing clubs have an attraction rate, the rate at which they bring people in, of 25%, compared to an attraction rate across North America of 12%. Okay? The average attrition rate, the rate at which we lose members, there's a slide later on that will show you, our attrition rate is on average 15%. 15% for growing clubs, 15% across North America. In other words, there's no real difference between how often growing clubs and other clubs lose members. That's the difference. Growing clubs do a really good job of bringing people in. And here's Doug's opinion. There are two reasons for that. One, they ask and invite. They have a membership committee. They have a membership chair. They're engaged in asking and inviting people in. And the other reason that the attraction rate is so low is that people do not have any interest in buying what we have to offer. They come and they join, and they don't want to stay. They don't see value in the offering. So what we need to be looking at is what it is we have to offer. I'll talk a little bit more about that. So to expand our reach, one of the key things that you can do is to engage the whole club in attracting members. It's been fascinating to me to hear the stories and see the stories of what people are doing, how often the club, it's like almost every single club meeting, membership is on the agenda. They're talking about it. They're thinking about who to join. Yes, they have a membership chair. Yes, they have a membership committee. But the point is, everybody understands it's all of our responsibility. The club that I joined, we had one person who was incredible at bringing people in. So good, nobody else did anything. And what happens if that person's not around? Right? And I'm thinking of another club, ironically, one of the clubs that's part of the growth study, where they had something similar. It was a really incredibly strong person at engaging and bringing people in. So, the point about reflecting the community and so on. So, how do we enhance participant engagement? Celebrate success and have fun together. Have fun together. Have fun together. The comments that people made in the open-ended questions were full of the word fun. Okay? People talked over and over again about how much fun they had together, how much they liked each other, how much they looked forward to doing things together, how much the service projects that they were doing were a real opportunity, right, to get their energy flowing and so on. So I can't underestimate how important it is for you to be thinking about the experience that people have. How irresistible are you? What kind of environment do you have? Are your clubs fun? Are your clubs engaging? Are your meetings, what are your meetings like? What are your opportunities? There is no difference, in my opinion, in the interests of people to serve. What's different today is that people want to do it, especially younger generations, they want to do service in a different way. Okay? They see different ways of doing it. It's not through going to a weekly meeting. Okay? So people need to find other ways of doing it. And the other thing is caring. Calling on members. If somebody is sick, a wall card. All sometimes very traditional things to do. And the last one here that I'd like you to think about is seeking out and supporting the priorities of your members. The club I'm a member of, I had nothing to do with this. I'm 1,000 miles away. Started out about 10 years ago with 22 members. And I think the last number is 70 as of today. How did they do it? They went through a whole process of looking at themselves, but one of the key things is, hello, Suzanne. What turns your crank? What would you like to do? What interests you? And finding out what Suzanne wants to do, and then building systems and processes and supports to enable that. One of the clubs in our study had 52 service projects a year. Stop and think about that for a minute. That's 52, one a week. How could you physically do that? You physically can do that by inviting people to come forward with something that they want to do and saying to them, if you come with a team to do it, we'll support you. So what happens is, it's not the club's responsibility, it's the members' opportunity and responsibility to do it, but that it enables them to do things. And what happens is, one person may only do one project a year, but others could do 3 or 4 or 5 and space it throughout the year. The problem and the opportunity with there means you have to run and manage the club in a different way. Because if Suzanne comes with a really fascinating, dynamic new idea, that may mean something else has to go. So we have to think about that and how we do that. Okay. This is the point that I made, so I'll go over this quickly. I can't remember if I made it. So on average, in North America, attrition rate in clubs in North America should be expected to be between 10 and 15%. As a member organization, that's what you would expect. Life happens. There's nothing you can do about it. You're going to lose people because they get married, because they have kids, because they get a promotion, because they move, because they die, etc., etc. Life happens. So you need to know, as a matter of course, that regardless of the size of your club, that's what's going to happen. I can tell you there's probably clubs in this room where that number is a lot bigger than 15%. I've seen 40%. And there's going to be some people in this room where the number's a lot smaller. I've seen 6%, which is amazing. When you get to 6%, that means we're all getting old together. And not bothering to bring people in. All right? So, attraction is important. Bring people in. Create an experience for those people. How do you do it? Just a quick examples. The fun thing I talked about, create an environment where people know. It doesn't mean it's going to be a wild party every time you get together, but you're going to sit with somebody, or you're going to work on a project with somebody that's a lot of fun, that shares your interests, that makes you laugh, tells you stories, that cares about you, that knows about you. And the last point on this slide is cost of participation is an example. If you think about your career path, and my career path, all right, there was a time early on in my career that even if I had been interested in joining Rotary. I wasn't, because at that time, I was not going to have anything to do with people that wore funny hats and had secret handshakes, which is what I thought Rotary was. But even if I wanted to, there's no way I could afford it, right? I had bills to pay, a young family, and so on. And so there are all kinds of people, potential Rotarians in your community, who might really be interested in being part of that nifty service project that you got going, but they can't afford the time or the money to be part of it. So there's an opportunity for you to look at the cost, the true cost of money and time of being a Rotarian. One of the things that gets people in trouble is they invite people to join and tell people the dues, and people think about the dues. Okay, yeah, I can handle that over the course of a year, but don't tell them the cost of meals. All right? Okay, and so if you think about it, but being honest with people up front about the cost. So I would encourage you to have a look at those kinds of things. What do you do about time, and what kinds of opportunities are available for you to think about that? And then the last set of slides here is about adaptability and being open to new ideas and being willing to try new things. I have been very fortunate. I have been able to visit dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of clubs in all kinds of countries, from North America to Europe to Asia. And a lot of those clubs, I didn't understand a word they were saying, because they don't all speak English for some reason. I can't understand why they didn't do it. But they do Rotary in a lot of different ways. But what's really interesting is in talking to many of the people in those clubs, how often they think Rotary is the way they do it. Right? Without understanding, there's all kinds of ways that you can be in a club, be a Rotarian, contribute, and do things. So, another opportunity for you is to have a look at how you're doing things. Is what you're doing the most effective way of doing things? Is what you're doing making it more or less likely that other people are going to want to be part of what you do? One of the things that came up in the last session is somebody made the point. It talked about satellite clubs, which is a really good example. What clubs are doing with the satellite is creating a group of people who meet at a different time and in a different way. You have to have at least people in it, and Rotary will recognize the satellite as part of your club. Other clubs don't call it a satellite, but it effectively is. They have an alternate meeting time. So, for example, the regular club, the mother club, so to speak, meets at noon on Mondays. The alternate club meets at a bar on Thursday. Right? There's a club in the area where I live where that's exactly what they do. So, just looking at alternative ways to do things. Talked about leadership and governance, supporting members and priorities, and being reflective of the community. So, I want to start talking to you in a minute and get some feedback from you. But again, the point about approaches, meetings, costs, look at who you are, where your members are really at, doing club surveys, using those surveys as an opportunity to begin the process of making change. I said to another group this morning, something to keep in mind. I strongly encourage you to change, but keep in mind that if you want to swallow an elephant, it's best to do it one bite at a time. It's easier too. So, there's a reason growing clubs' attraction rate is 10% greater than attrition rate. And it's because they focus on creating an irresistible experience. They focus on creating opportunities for people to meet their need to serve. I got a little pushback. I'll get interested in your feedback in the last session. Is they don't focus on retention. Retention's important, but it's not a target. Okay? The target is the experience, is what you have to offer your club, your members, potential members, to your community. It's the service that matters. And then the last point that I'll make now, before getting some feedback from you, is to really emphasize, look at the action plan, see what the resources are available in the action plan. Chris Etienne talked last night about the toolkit. There's a little 4-pager that's available for you to begin to give you ideas. Start thinking about what that really means, because we got data that proves by following what the action plan suggests, you can achieve growth. It really is true. So, I know it's the middle of the afternoon and we're tired, so talk to me. Tell me where you're at with your club. What do you think about all of this? What does it suggest to you? What does it tell you you ought to be doing or ought not to be doing? Anybody?